Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 268 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, joined by my co-host. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. And I was just about to say Jordan Watkins will be joining us, but he's joining us right now, just in time for the intro. Really perfect timing, Jordan. So, guys, he's at Big 75 Fella as well. First of all, Adnan, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing well. As well as I can be doing after the team literally handed away a division win on Sunday. And instead of firmly grasp it.
Firmly grasp it.
Instead of firmly grasping control of this division, they've instead opted to make it a 3-team dogfight down the stretch. So, let's gear up for that because, this team can't get out of its own way.
Nope, no, they cannot. And that's really the theme of this episode, is really perfectly encapsulated there. And also joining us to talk about it as well, Jordan Watkins at Big 75 Fella. Jordan, how are you doing today?
Firmly grasp it.
I'm
doing all right. It's just one of those things where it's one of those situations. I'm doing all right. We'll get into it. I have my concerns about this matchup. And honestly, a good bit of the concerns isn't even about the matchup itself. It's not about the X's and O's or things like that. It's just the situation. And I know we'll get down into it. So just happy to be here with y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're gonna get into it. Obviously, the Falcons going up against the Panthers this week, and we're gonna see how Atlanta fares in the rematch. In the first outing, the Falcons actually played a pretty tight game against them, with Atlanta pulling away in the fourth quarter. But that game, I think a lot of people forget, was tight up until then. And in fact, the offense was really struggling through the first half of that game. So hopefully a little bit cleaner this time. Panthers obviously hurting on their offensive line. We will see if the Falcons can get some of these injured guys back this week. That would be big. But we'll get into that. We'll get into sort of the situation now for the Falcons in the playoffs, which has gotten a lot dicier, obviously. There was a big report about Arthur Smith's job security that I know we're going to get into, and then we'll talk about the playoffs, and we'll also talk about the draft, because if they don't make the playoffs, we're probably looking at another top 10 draft pick. So, really there's a lot of opportunity here for many different content avenues, and we'll try to get to as many of those tonight as we can. But before we dive in too deep, guys, I want to bring you a quick word from our sponsor at betonline.ag. Folks, all the major sports are in action this week, with the college football playoffs ready to kick off, and BetOnline remains your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. So no matter what you're betting on, guys, head to the website today to get in on the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV is that code, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Remember, guys, promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, well, Adnan, I haven't gotten your take on this game yet. We'll finish off our discussion of the Bucs. I just want to get your thoughts on it. I know it was obviously really frustrating. Jordan and I spent the better part of an hour breaking down just how frustrating it was, but wanted to get your take on it as well. I mean, big lost opportunity, obviously, but what did you think about the game itself?
I think we're past the point of frustration. I think the Titans was frustrating. The Vikings game was frustrating. The Cardinals game. We're to the point of it's become sort of maddening, especially this game where the Falcons, I think, for the most part, firmly outplayed the Buccaneers in this game. But they just could not get out of their own way. They just made mistake after mistake after mistake. And that just sort of encapsulates the entire season with this team, because on offense, the offense just could not get out of its own way. But between the play calling of Arthur Smith and Desmond Ritter's mistakes, you had, first of all, I have no idea what that play was on that interception. Like it just felt like gimmicky schoolyard bullshit. Please excuse my language, where it's just like you spin around and then you throw a screen pass. Like why? Like what was that going to do? What was that going to achieve? So that ends up giving the Buccaneers the ball inside the 5-yard line. They end up scoring a touchdown, which of course they do. So that's 7 points. The safety was also another play where it's like, why are you calling a long developing play? And at the same time, if you're Desmond Ridder is one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen at having that clock inside his head. Like, he genuinely just stays back there for as long as possible. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why he always fumbles the ball. I think he spent a solid 3 seconds in the end zone after drifting back there in the first place before he gets the ball smacked out of his hands. That's another 2 points. So on offense, you pretty much gift them 9 points. And then on the other side, Desmond Ridder misses Bijan Robinson on a wide open flat route for what should have been a touchdown. You end up kicking a field goal. So you lose out on 4 points. And then Younghoe Koo. I know we love Younghoe Koo, but my God, you're a kicker. You have one job in the NFL, and I get it. 50 yards, 51 yards, those aren't chip shots. In today's NFL, especially in a dome, anything below 54 yards should, for the most part, be near automatic. You should have a very high percentage kicking those. I mean, Brandon Aubrey kicked a 60-yarder for Dallas before he kicked a 59-yarder. I'm sorry, it's unacceptable to miss multiple kicks under 54 yards in a game. You lose out on 6 points. By my count, you've lost out on 10 points on offense. You've gifted them 9 points on the other end. And in the end, it doesn't matter that you outplayed them. You just sort of handed them points. You just sort of handed the Buccaneers the victory in this game. And, it just sort of, it was just a huge missed opportunity. And it was just, this is going to be the game at the end of the season where if this team doesn't win the division, where I look back on it and I'm like, yeah, that Bucs game first and foremost. And then the thing is, there's a huge list of games where you say that. For me, it's probably going to be this Bucs game more than anything else.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And we've obviously talked about the other games that this team should have won. We go back to the Commanders game where they threw that one away with offensive turnovers. We go back to, the late losses to the Titans, to the Cardinals, to the Vikings. I mean, so many. It's like they've lost in the same manner so many times this year. And it's really frustrating. You definitely nailed the frustration aspect of it. And, I wish that they would stop doing that, but they don't seem to be capable of it. And that's kind of the crux of this team, is they can't get out of their own way. It's mistakes compounded by other mistakes. And, offensively, it's constant, and it requires perfection from the defense and special teams for this team to have a chance to win. And so you get a day where Koo does miss a couple kicks, and that's the difference in the game, because even this team with over 400 yards of offense can't score more than 25 points. That I think they've gotten over 30 points once in the Arthur Smith tenure in 3 seasons. So, they just have to be better. And once again, we saw this team thoroughly outplay Tampa Bay, and this time they lost. That's exactly what happened in the previous matchup too, except that one they turned it over 3 times inside the 10. They still somehow managed to win that game. This time they weren't so lucky. So
I'm just sad because we should be on here right now talking about the amazing day that Drake London had. Yeah. We should be opening up the show with 170 yards and making some insane catches. We should be talking about AJ Terrell locking down future Hall of Famer Mike Evans, who absolutely cooks the Falcons. We should be opening up with, Clark Phillips having a hell of a game. Like, Clark Phillips is just, he's been incredible so far. I think if he continues this, he's going to possibly make Jeff Okudah expendable this offseason. That's going to be another conversation for later on. But if Clark Phillips right now, by the early signs, I know he's only played for a couple of weeks so far. Right now, he's starting to play himself into a possible, conversation for a starting role next year. Like, we should be talking about, some of these offensive linemen who are backups who stepped into the role very well, despite all the injuries. Ryan Newsel had a pretty good game. Tyler Vrabel had a hell of a game. Like, the Falcons at one point had 4 starters,
Four.
Starters along the offensive line injured, and we didn't even call out the offensive line as much for poor blocking, for poor pass protection. I feel like that they all did a really great job given the circumstances of, you have 3 or 4 backups in there. But man, it's just frustrating because some of these guys deserve better, and instead we're just talking about the blown opportunities and the mistakes.
Yeah. Once again, that's what we're talking about. I feel like every week, enough of it. There's no more excuses for him, and it just keeps happening every single week. We've seen it time and time again, and there we go. Once again, we're staring down the barrel of another losing season, another missed playoff. At this point, I wonder what the odds are on 7-10 again with Arthur Smith. It seems to be, he's like, well, you got the worst roster in the league. I can get you 7-10. Okay, you have a good roster. I can get you 7-10. That's all I got. I can get you 7-10 no matter what you give me, unfortunately. So that's tough. But yeah, Jordan, I know we talked about it a lot, but any further takes on this Bucs game? Anything else that you wanted to touch on before we try to turn the page on this miserable Week 14?
I guess a couple. One of them being, again, we talk about the play by the goal line, and I've heard what people have said, and they've had to comment about the throw to Bijan. Now, first off, when I said, and we talked about Desmond has to hit it, wasn't saying that in terms of he had to throw it behind him or like on him, because I get it. Usually, if you throw it right onto a player, that's an interception in this league, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always, like, when I was watching it, I thought he threw it too far, right? That was always my idea, and I've been watching it back. I've looked at what other people have said, what other quarterbacks have said, and it's a little blurry. And I'm going to admit, even on my level of expertise, it's a little bit blurry in terms of like how that was supposed to go. But I will say this. In terms of like, and Adnan, like I love you. I have to disagree with you in terms of what you say about Younghoe Koo. I think anything that's 50 plus, you're putting it up. You're just putting it up in arms. And yes, like the Dallas kicker, I forget his name, but like the dude's been balling. Shout out to him. I got nothing against him, right? Like he's making everything look easy. My thing is, as an offense, if you don't do anything, especially if you have the ball in a certain field position, you don't do anything that gives your field goal kicker a better opportunity to make kicks, I can't blame him. And again, like we talked about this on the post game show, and also Talking Trenches, in terms of those 2 drives that led to a 50 and 52-yard field goal attempt from Younghoe Koo. Like, again, he's good. Of course, we all expect him to make those kicks because he's that good. I totally understand that. But, it wasn't like we had a 40-yard drive, 50-yard drive, anything like that got us to, well, here we are. Like, we did get past midfield. It's like, no, we had the ball at the 47. So that's, like I said, that's just where I have to disagree on that in terms of Younghoe and what he's doing. And again, like the fact of the matter is, to your point about what Dallas kicker's doing, you can only name one kicker. If you want to name Justin Tucker too, that's fine. That's 2 kickers. There's 29 other teams that are out there. So
I disagree on that one. I think most of them do hit 50 plus consistently, and either way, Younghoe Koo is the highest paid kicker in the NFL. I'm sorry, I expect him to hit 50 yards, 51 yards.
That's fine. I mean, like, trust me, when I see Younghoe Koo go on the field too, I do as well. But again, my point being, you get the football in shorter field position. I expect the offense to make something happen. The offense didn't make something happen, so that's why we had to rely on the field. The thing for me is I never want to rely on a field goal kicker, and that's just like I was saying, like that's just me and how I've always gone about things, right? Like obviously when we had it, we had that one again. We didn't score at the 2, and trust me, like we talked about the throw. I'd still rather see us try to run the ball at the 2-yard line. Like that's just me. I get it was 3rd down. I'd rather see us run the ball. We didn't do that. Had to go in the field goal. Nobody was questioning whether Younghoe Koo was going to make that. Even when we scored the touchdown late and it was time for Younghoe to come out for an extra point, Nobody was questioning him to make that kick. But again, those are closer kicks. But that's my point being of it's up to the offense to make it even closer, make it even easier for him. And that's why I said, like, in terms of Justin Tucker, I've seen Justin Tucker miss. I've seen Justin Tucker miss extra points, you know, and like that he's the consensus, at least right now. I know the numbers might say otherwise, but at least consensus wise, he's the best kicker in NFL history. And he misses those too. So that's my point being of you can't have a 5-play, 19-yard drive, 6-play, 20-yard drive, and then just rely on your kicker. That's just not a good formula for me.
We agree fully on the offense has to do better, but no, I completely disagree about giving the kicker a pass.
I didn't say he gets a pass.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying I'm not just going to sit here and say that he missed 2 50-plus yard kicks and I'm going out there expecting him to make them. He missed them. I got you. I got you on that. Yeah. But again, my point being is
when you're the highest paid, and I can name many kickers that are pretty consistent from that range. Justin Tucker, Jason Sanders, Harrison Butker, Daniel Carlson.
Who's really consistent from that range too, but no one's perfect from that range.
I've seen all the kickers you've named miss from there. I've seen all of them.
And I'm not saying cut Younghoe Koo. I'm not saying Younghoe Koo is terrible. I'm just
he's a bust.
Yeah, I'm saying Younghoe Koo has a very large share of the blame in this game because you have one job, and it's not like he's out here trying to hit the NFL record. Like if this was 54, 55, I'd be like whatever. But in a dome, I expect at the very least hit one of them, because if he hits one of them, the entire trajectory of this game changes. You can possibly kick a field goal at the very end of the game, because doing the math, it would have been a 1-point game instead of a 4-point game at the very end. But I'm just saying, like, I expect a lot from Younghoe Koo, but also I expect a lot from any professional NFL kicker from a certain range and lower, and that is within that range.
So let me ask you this, because I know you cover the Hawks too, right?
Yep.
How many points per game do you expect Trae Young to get?
It's not the same thing.
Just answer the question. How many points per game do you expect Trae Young to get?
The average is 27.
Okay, so do you expect him to get 27? Like what? I'm just asking.
No, I'm saying, like, in the NBA, you have players who do multiple different things. Trae Young, especially. Younghoe Koo has one job.
So you have other people in the NBA that have other jobs that make that one player's easy, that makes that one player's job easier, right?
Yeah.
So again, what I'm saying is,
but when you are the highest paid, when you are the gold standard at your position, there's a certain expectation of it. We can agree to disagree here, but I absolutely expect him, and I absolutely do place plenty of blame on him for this game.
Look, I guess my philosophy with football, never going expecting just straight up, okay, boom, we got a kick coming up that's 50-plus yards out. Kicker's going to make it. It's
modern NFL.
And again,
it's
you can say it's modern NFL. That's fine. Like, I got you. I get it. I'm just saying, I think that is a bad way to go about things. Like, yes, I want to see Younghoe Koo make them. I do trust that he's going to make them. But still, I would rather see, and again, we talked about this a lot about complementary football. Here's where the Falcons did not play complementary football, is you go even further on your drives and make those kicks easier. Like if he missed from 30, 35, 40, 45, all right, I'm with you.
That type of miss is inexcusable.
He missed from 50 plus twice. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not.
I agree be that much on the offense having to help them 100%, but also where you lose me is you can miss. I think it's fine. I'm not fine, but you can miss once. You can't miss multiple kicks. You can't leave 3 points on the field multiple times in the same game.
Yeah, I mean, getting to the two misses definitely hurts. I mean, that's obviously something that ended up being the difference in the game, right? If you get those 6 points, you're ahead at the end. Maybe it's a different scenario. You know, and what we talked about on Trench Talk was, like, I blame the offense, not for the reasons that Jordan brought up, right? Which was that they could have done a lot more to get better field position there, especially given where those drives started. The other one was that they just, in the third quarter, they just punted like 4 times straight. Like, I think it was actually like 6. I think they went like 7 or 8 drives consecutive without scoring, and 2 of those were the missed field goals. But I just need the offense to do something in the second and third quarter. You know? Yeah. They gave up a safety and the pick 6. Or, you know,
they also put the Bucks at the 5-yard line. Like the offense is.
Yeah.
The offense is not absolved by any means. Like the offense, it's stuck in neutral at this point. Like it's just.
And that's where I ultimately land on it. Yeah, is I just like and that's kind of my point, and I think that's what Jordan's getting at too. Is we shouldn't be depending on every aspect of the team being perfect to win games, because it doesn't come together that often where everyone can be perfect. The defense can't give up points, and the special teams can't make any mistakes because the offense is so mistake prone that you're basically gifting your opponent, 10 points on offense and putting the defense on the field for the entire third quarter. And then it's kind of what we talked about, right, on Trench Talk, which was that a lot of people are blaming the defense for losing this game. They're like, oh, well, they gave up the score at the end. And I'm like, well, what about the other 3 quarters where the offense could have scored and could have done all these things and not put the game on the defense at the end of the game again, which is what they've done so many times, is they pull off some kind of miracle to get this team ahead late. And then they're like, okay, defense, we know you've been out there all game covering our asses. And now, we need you to stop them now that you've played, 80 snaps. Get out there and stop them, defense. And sometimes they do. Good for them. But we need so much more from the offense. And if you saw this defense's like stats this year, like just look at their season-long stats this year. If you had told any of us 3, like this is what the defense's stats are this year, like it's going to be a top 10 defense, like a fringe top 10 defense or right around top 10, we would say like, oh yeah, well they're definitely winning 10 plus games. They're winning 11 games. They're probably running away with the division because the defense is actually good. That's a surprise. And I feel like we've come full circle now where it's like, oh, the defense didn't stop them at the end of the game. Wow, what the hell, defense? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, I feel like last year it would have been like, if they managed to stop someone at the end, we consider it like a small miracle. So I just, given the construction of the team and given the coaching, the head coach and all this, I don't think anyone's fighting this interpretation. Is like, we expected the offense to be the engine, and it's not. And it's actually hurting the team on a week-to-week basis. And part of that is, that the scheme seems weak. Part of that is that the offensive players are making mistakes. I know a criticism was that Bijan's route on that goal line pass was not correct. That's true. Like, he definitely crept towards the goal line. But again, it's like, every single game we're seeing mistakes by the offense. Lots of receivers running wrong routes, missing blocks. There's this emphasis on Kyle Pitts blocking. And I know people are like, oh, well, Kyle Pitts is missing blocks. Well, yeah, he's not a great blocker because that's not who he is. And it's,
again,
it's
the interception from Winfield, again, like I said, that's not on him. Look, I'm just trying to tell people, again, if you expect someone to be in a certain place, but they read a place so well that, they can shoot it like that, you're not going to block them. Right. And again, like Kevin, I know I brought this example up in terms of when I told you, like when I was on the field, when we played Colorado, like, look, their offensive line coach can be as mad at that center all they want for missing that block. He was never going to block me on that play because I knew it was coming. He was never going to reach me. And that's the thing about that play too. When Winfield, again, give him credit for knowing what was coming and making the play, he was never going to get there. Like, we can talk about Kyle Pitts not being a good blocker all we want, which is fair. That play is a terrible example to put on that reel of him being a bad blocker.
Yeah. If they know what the play is before it's called, you lose all your advantage on offense. You lose the advantage that you have. Which is that what's coming and the defense doesn't. And if you don't have, and that's part of the reason why I hate running empty in this offense too, because it's like, well, you've taken the threat of a run outside of a QB keeper, which, Ritter actually probably could execute. So it's not 100% that you could ignore the run, but man, you're hamstringing this offense's ability to keep the defense on their toes, and you got to keep something. You got to keep your cards hidden to some extent, and on that screen that gets intercepted, that was like the third or fourth screen like that we'd run in the game. It wasn't the exact same play, but the alignment was very similar. It was a similar play call, and Carlton Davis flies up, and he's like, "Oh, I've seen this 3 times in this game, and probably 15 times on tape. Like, I know exactly what's coming, and if I miss this tackle, then I'm sure someone else is going to rally, so it's fine." And there you go, basically a pick six and huge turning point in the game. Those points.
Like I said,
sealed
all
the
I
win
know
for
is
him,
he doesn't make that play unless he knows what's coming. That's all. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, it's too predictable. It's not creative, and it just didn't like it. I don't like a lot about the offense. And another part of it is that if you look at, I was talking with someone on Twitter about this today, where it was like, if you look at the running back carries and the rushing games for both teams, you would probably be like, oh, let's see, 25 for 108, and then like somebody else gets like 5 carries. That looks like what that's probably Bijan and Tyler Algier getting a few carries in reserve, right? Nope. That's the Bucs giving Rachaad White 25 carries for 100 yards. Meanwhile, the Falcons gave Bijan 10 carries. And no offense to Algier, they gave Algier I think 11 carries or something similar. So, and obviously some of Bijan's yardage was considered a pass. That little jet sweep, that was another like 40-yard play, but we're not that and again, this leads me back to my main problem with this offense, which kind of bleeds into the overall issues with the team that we're talking about. They don't feature their playmakers. They seem adamant to not do that, actually. And you look at Drake London in this game, he gets force-fed targets even when he's not open in this one, and he comes down with some spectacular catches. Has a career day, 10 for 172. And it's like, how many? Wow, Drake London, he's really good. He's getting 10 targets. That's great. And it's like, how many times has he gotten 10 targets in his career? Like 4, ever. And there's no other receivers on this team. So it's like, who else are you throwing the ball to? And part of that obviously is the Falcons just don't throw the ball that much, but they threw the ball 40 times in this game, right? So it's like they're not using Kyle Pitts. They sometimes use Drake London, and even Bijan Robinson, they're given 10 carries to in a must-win game against a team down their best run defender. I don't understand the game plan. I know you don't either, Jordan. I mean, what did you think about the game plan in this one, Adnan? That was one of my biggest beefs was their balls to the wall, air it out game plan when the Bucs were down Vita Vea.
I mean, yeah, it's inexplicable. It feels like whatever is like the logical thing, whatever is the simple thing to do, Arthur Smith just opts to do the opposite, and it feels like he's just sort of paranoid that, oh yeah, this is what the Bucs think we're going to do. So we obviously can't do this. We have to do the exact opposite thing. When it's like, who cares what they think you're going to do? Like, obviously, they think you're going to feed Bijan. Like, everyone thinks you're going to feed Bijan because that's the logical thing to do. But I don't know. It just feels like he gets too cute. Like he's been getting too cute all season long. He's been getting too cute throughout his entire tenure here. And I don't know. I don't know when enough is going to be enough. And I don't know if he's ever really going to be able to change off of that, because it's completely inexplicable for this team as a whole, not just in this game, to not use Kyle Pitts as much as they should. It's inexplicable for them to, up until 2 or 3 games ago, they had, I think 8 weeks into the season, they had given Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson the same amount of touches. I think Bijan had 3 more touches total.
Yeah, it was close.
Throughout the first half of the season. Like that's I don't know. That feels like you're doing too much. It feels like you're getting too cute, and I just don't know. I just feel like this is who Arthur Smith is, and he's just not going to change. He's not planning on adapting, and I think that's probably going to get us more into our conversation later on in the show about that job security report. But yeah, it was just that's just one of the more maddening things about this team.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, anything else you wanted to say about the game plan on this one before we turn the page to some somewhat related job security questions here in Atlanta?
No, not really. Again, like I said before, I think it's just it's an insane that Rachaad White had one fewer carry than the Falcons had rushing attempts as a whole.
Yep.
Like I said it before. I keep saying this, especially when you consider the fact, like you already said, Vita Vea was out. So that's all I got on that.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's pretty sad stuff that we just refuse to. I mean, even now, I think Bijan has, 17 more carries than Tyler Algier over 13 games. And, it's, no offense to Tyler Algier. He's averaging 3.5 yards per carry. That's not good enough in the NFL. But we've seen him do his job, right? At the end of games, he's the hammer. He comes in, he lays it down on the defense when they're tired. It works great. Tyler Algier early in games doesn't work so well because, first of all, teams have a whole year of tape on him, so they know what to expect when he gets the ball. And second, he just doesn't offer you that dynamic playmaking, and Bijan does. He showed it on that jet sweep. Breaks one tackle, and there you go. He's breaking another tackle, 40 yards downfield, and Tyler Algier just doesn't offer that, and that's a big part of how the run game was supposed to evolve, which was that last year we had Cordarrelle Patterson, who, again, he and Algier are very similar, right? They're sort of hammers at this stage in their career. Obviously, Patterson has some open field moves still, and he's a physical runner, but we didn't have that dynamic, flashy runner that could really make magic happen in the backfield. And we got that in Bijan, and we're like, okay, we're spending a top 10 pick on a running back. This is going to be the focal point. This is going to be our star. And once again, we see Arthur Smith just refuse to emphasize anyone, even Bijan.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I guess the thing for me, like I said, what makes it frustrating, and I know I've talked about it before. I guess it's story time. So
yeah,
at Stanford, even when I was in practice, we had a player. And he was a good running back, right? But we had a player. Maybe y'all have heard this name before. His name was Barry Sanders. So it was Barry Sanders' son, right? He was one of my teammates. And how we used him, it got so predictable in terms of anytime I saw him in the huddle and we're going against him in practice, I didn't even rush. I wouldn't pass rush. I wouldn't do anything. It's like, all right, well, Barry's in. I know what play's coming. It's a screen. And every single time I was right. And so that's what I'm saying in terms of that's what I was talking about before. And what we talked about all year in terms of being frustrated about, being so predictable is, again, because you talked about early in the game. Of course, early in the game, predictability actually matters. Like when you're late in the game, predictability doesn't because guys get tired up front. So I can tell someone, in the fourth quarter, hey, here's Tyler Algier. We're going to run the ball in between the A or B gap, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's literally nothing you do about it. You're gassed. You're tired of dealing with this running attack, time and time again. But when it's earlier in a game, right? So we have Bijan in, and there's that outside zone. There's that stretch. You can stop that. Or Tyler Algier's in, and it's we're going inside the A-B gap. You can stop it. You're a little bit more fresh. Because, a lot of times what we've seen in this running attack is what happens later on in a game, right? That's when you see the variance where Bijan might get those runs where he goes more so inside the tackles. That's where we've seen some of the outside zone and stretch plays for Tyler Algier. You switch it up then. But, yeah, of course, if it's earlier in the game, of course people stop it. They know what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think he's not as effective early in the game. And I think it's pretty obvious. It's just when the defense is full speed, full energy, that sort of battering ram style, it doesn't work as well because guys are like, okay, I just got to play my gap. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to create some traffic and he's going to run into me and it's going to suck sometimes. But I'm good. I'm fresh. I can handle it. We can all handle it. We're just going to rally and make the tackle. Late in the game, it's like, God damn, I'm gonna stick my nose in there, but sometimes there's some business decisions being made, and sometimes you go to make that tackle when you're gassed, and the guy just bounces off you. You try to get a hand on him, and he just slips out, and that's why I think Bijan typically is the better option early in games, because you can be full energy and go try to make a tackle on Bijan, and he makes that cut as you're diving for the tackle, and he's gone. And whether you're at full power or half power, if he makes that move right, you have no chance to tackle him. So again,
You also
this is
took Bijan as the highest drafted running back since Saquon, top 10, just to put him into a committee.
Yeah.
Where you're not even utilizing his strengths correctly.
Yeah. I mean, at least they're utilizing him as a receiver sometimes now. I mean, there was that weird midseason stretch where they just stopped throwing him the ball altogether. So,
like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? I don't understand what the plan is. I don't see the vision. I don't know if there is a vision. I think they're just throwing shit against the wall right now.
Yeah. No, it's like a beautiful macaroni painting, right? You're what is that? Is that supposed to be is that that's a lovely tree. Oh no, that's a horse. Oh yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's a lovely horse. Yeah. I mean, it's really frustrating. But that leads us on to our next point, which is that we saw a report from ESPN reporter Jeremy Fowler, who we know has connections with the Falcons, today, basically saying that Arthur Smith's job is expected to be safe, quote, barring a late season collapse, which I would argue that this loss to Tampa Bay kind of qualifies a little bit as a late season collapse. The fact that they're 6-7 right now is kind of seems like they're a late season collapse. But basically the idea is that probably if he doesn't lose out, he's going to be back in 2024. And obviously that didn't sit well with fans. I mean, I just kind of tweeted it out as news, didn't really comment on it, but I don't think I saw, I think I saw a handful of people out of like hundreds that replied say like, oh, good, he deserves another chance. I think everyone's sort of like, why does he get another chance? And I think we know why, right? Which is basically that Arthur Blank has a lot of faith in Arthur Smith. And I think obviously they're giving him a mulligan for the first two seasons, considering that the roster was where it was, which I think to some extent is fair. But I don't agree with giving him the mulligan for this season, where everything is here. This is year 3 of the offense. Like, if the defense was still coming together, I guess I would be like, okay, the defense is still holding this team back. Ryan Nielsen's here for the first year. We should expect this to get better, whatever, But it's the offense that's the problem, and this is Smith's bread and butter. And the plan doesn't seem good. Like, I don't like it. I know you don't like it, Adnan. I know you don't like it, Jordan. The plan looks bad. So it's like, why would I want to keep going on this plan? Like, if this is the 3-year plan, please God, don't let it get to year 4, because this will be the 32nd ranked offense in year 4 if we keep on this trajectory. So it's an ugly looking offense right now. I don't really know what the point of it is. It's not run heavy anymore. It's not pass heavy. They drafted they drafted these 2 big receivers that they seem reluctant to throw the ball to and feature. They drafted a running back in the top 10 that they seem reluctant to feature and like they want to save him for the playoffs, which kind of bold of you to assume you're going to make the playoffs anyway, because you might not and probably won't at this point. We'll see. But Adnan, I mean, what do you think first of all, what's your opinion on Arthur Smith? What do you think the bar should be for these final 4 games for Arthur Smith to return in 2024? We'll start with that.
I don't think it could be more cut and dry for me. I think it's, you make the playoffs, fine. I understand not wanting to fire a coach that just broke a playoff drought, even though I have my own opinions about it. But I can understand that. I feel like that could be reasonable if you win the division. Either way, I would hope that next year that seed is a lot hotter no matter what, barring a deep playoff run this year. But if you make the playoffs, I can understand the justification for bringing Arthur Smith back. Let me just put it that way. If you don't, then what are you doing? What are we doing as a franchise? Because if you don't win this division, if you don't make the playoffs, that means that Arthur Smith will have been here for 3 years. All 3 will have been losing seasons. And you said it, first 2 years, he got a mulligan for it. This was his mulligan. This year, like coming into this year, there was no talk about Arthur Smith being on the hot seat. You have had 3 off seasons of getting your players in here. And, Arthur Smith, I know he's not the general manager, but he gets a lot of say in how this roster is constructed. And he gets a lot of say in how this roster looks. I don't think that there's any more excuses. You've been gift wrapped the easiest division in football, and you have been gift wrapped the easiest schedule in football. And it feels like you're just going to piss it all away this year if you don't win this division. And the other thing for me is, in today's NFL, what coach gets 3 straight years of losing seasons?
None in Atlanta ever have. Not with blank. Yeah.
Mike Smith, after 2 years, after 2 losing seasons, he got fired. And he was coming off of 5 consecutive winning seasons for a franchise that had never put together back-to-back winning seasons. I'm not saying that was a mistake to let Mike Smith go at the time, but I'm just saying, like, after 2 years, he was let go of. Dan Quinn didn't even complete his 3rd straight losing season, and he was the head coach that brought this team closer to a Super Bowl triumph than anyone else. Arthur Smith has done nothing. Like, he has done nothing ever as a head coach in this league, and you're going to give him ironclad job security compared to other coaches. Legitimately, Bill Belichick's about to get fired in New England, and he's had 3 losing seasons in 23 years. He's had more than twice as many Super Bowl titles as he has losing seasons up with the Patriots. Like, genuinely, what coaches in the NFL have that kind of job security? Maybe Mike Tomlin, maybe John Harbaugh. 2 guys who are going to be in the Hall of Fame, 2 guys who are Super Bowl winners, 2 guys who have done this, who have put together a lot of winning seasons in the NFL. Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand it. And this is just me talking about the hypothetical of keeping him if you don't win this division and if you don't make the playoffs. And if that happens, then I don't know. We may have to start having the Arthur Blank conversation at that point.
Yeah, and we could have that conversation at some point. It's just kind of a pointless conversation because there's nothing we can do about it, right? So I mean, we can complain about it. That's fine.
But it's just the question of like,
what's the thought process?
What's the thought process, and is this team really going to have long-term success with these kind of decisions? Because we were talking about it with Dan Quinn. We were saying, all right, we hope that Arthur Blank learned his lesson with Dan Quinn. He kept him for a year too long. And, that sort of gave him and Dimitrov, the opportunity to make a lot of short-sighted moves in that offseason. And the Falcons were paying for those moves for the next 2 years into the next regime. And, if you keep Arthur Smith after another losing season, it'll just be, he's learned nothing.
Yeah, no, I think I'm very much in the same boat with you, Adnan. But yeah, Jordan, for you, I mean, what would it take for you to feel like a ringing endorsement, or that you would be like, okay, if you do this, I think Arthur Smith has earned the right to stay in 2024. Like, what kind of record, or is it playoffs, for you, Jordan, that you're looking for?
Nothing. And
you're done.
I've talked about. Well, I guess that's the thing for me. I've said this way before. I think a lot of other people had to, right? Again, we can go back to some of our preseason shows, and I said I have to see it from him, right? And again, I get it. We were 7-10 last year, and I was pointing to certain specific instances where even with the roster that we had, okay, cool. Maybe your game plan scheme, yada yada, elevated us over what we should have been at 7-10, but I can also point to you as certain situations as to why you hindered us to be down at 7-10. So I was saying that beforehand, but where I have changed is I came to the reality, a while back. It's like, he's not going anywhere, and this is what we have to deal with. So that being the case, and I got to give, as y'all know, I'm always watching the chat, and one of the guys in there, Corey Carter, they've been on this for a long time now. And the thing is, it's Arthur Blank, this is on you. And I'm saying that in terms of, you want to bring Arthur Smith back? All right. And I totally fully expect that he will be back. I do. The thing is, look, we can say all we want. They need to bring in an offensive coordinator. They need to do this. They need to do that. I don't expect Arthur Smith all of a sudden to turn around and be like, you know what? Maybe I'm not as good as play calling and designing certain things as I am. I need to bring in an offensive coordinator. No, I don't expect that. That's got to be from up above. And so, well, not up above as in God, but I'm saying as in like
literally divine intervention is what this team needs.
Right. But my thing being is like, that's got to come from someone in the front office. Like, hey, all right, we're bringing you back. Here's your chance. But if we're going to give you this chance, you had to bring an offensive coordinator. Somebody like we talk about, Ragone and being a yes man, this and that, right? Like, no, let's delegate some of the responsibilities and all this. Who's going to be your quarterback coach? Quarterback coach matters. Like that's an important position. I know, like maybe other people might not realize that quarterback coach matters
a lot,
right? Maybe you have a quarterback coach. I mean, maybe you have an OC right now that should be a quarterback coach, right? Like maybe that's what it is. So
yeah, Ragone, former NFL quarterback.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the thing for me. And I know Matt Schaub's kind of just floating around in this organization somewhere. It doesn't really have a title.
That he's the de facto quarterback coach, but
I
just didn't give him the title.
I
mean, it's
like you but again, like that. But again, that's part on the organization of we just leave that up for everyone else to speculate, right? So my thing being with that is, look, again, I as everyone can probably tell if you've heard me talk, I've been well past my Arthur Smith needs to go days because I think he's gonna. I fully expect him to be back. But in terms of your question, though, like you got to win this division, and you have to win this division with a winning record, because anything outside of that, look, we said again before the season, we said 10-7 at like right around in that ballpark for a reason, not just because of how this team looks. How terrible the schedule is. And honestly, the thing about it is, as bad as the schedule was going into the season, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, it has.
It's gotten worse. For example, like you saw Minnesota on the schedule, right?
Yep. They were 13.
You thought you were playing Minnesota with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson. That didn't happen. We saw the Jets on the schedule. You thought the Jets were going to be on there with Aaron Rodgers. Like there's certain things that happen. The schedule is actually even worse than what it was when we came into the year, when we said 10-7, and we're struggling to be 500 right now.
Yeah.
So like that's why I'm saying, like, overall, there's nothing, but all I know is if you don't win this division with how all the breaks that we've gotten and all the situations that we had, oh my goodness, like
what exactly is it that you do here? Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, that's exactly right. And that's how I feel about it too. Like you got to win the division. No exceptions. And I mean, at least get to 8-9, but probably need to get to 9-8. But at this point, I don't think they're getting to 9-8. I think 8-9 is the best they can do. So, I think their path to the playoffs is beat the Panthers this week. If they lose to the Panthers, he should be fired. I'm sorry. Like, you should fire him after that. Like, you lose to the Bucs, you lose to the Panthers. I'm sorry. Like,
losing to the Panthers is
I cannot abide. And because you won't make the playoffs after that. Because if you lose to the Panthers, like, you ain't beating the Colts, who are in the playoffs right now, and you're not beating the Bears, who all of a sudden look like they've got their shit together, unlike the Falcons. So, and then you got to go to New Orleans, and it's like, are you really winning that game now? Like, New Orleans is a completely different team in New Orleans. So, first of all, you got to beat the Panthers, and then you got to win one of these next couple games, obviously. But if it was like this team was ravaged by injury, or like, the only problem was that Desmond Ridder wasn't playing well. Like, Desmond Ridder just is clearly the worst starter in the NFL, and like the game plan looks solid, but like Ridder just can't execute it. Like, there are a few paths to, like, maybe you could squint and be like, well, we can't really hold the season against him. Like, they made a mistake at quarterback, whatever. And definitely quarterback has something to do with it, but it's not the whole story. But like, I don't know what you hang your hat on. Like, they're not utilizing the playmakers they drafted. 3 straight top 10 picks. Like, Kyle Pitts is a bit player. Drake London is maybe the only one you could argue is being used correctly, and even he's barely getting 10 targets. Like, he's not even getting close to 10 targets a game. Bijan's in a timeshare, like a 50-50 timeshare most of the time. Like, and I don't... The offense last year, you could be like, well, this is like the NFL's best rushing attack, or arguably the best rushing attack. So he could hang his hat on that he was designing this dominant run game. that run game isn't here anymore. Like the run game is nowhere near as good as it was last year. It's still like top 10, but it's not dominant anymore, and it's nowhere near as consistent as it used to be. So like, and you're playing teams that are worse than last year too. Like this year's schedule is significantly easier than last year, and you're playing worse. Yeah, and you're playing worse.
Next year is very brutal as well.
And it's not all injuries either. And in fact, I would say like they've had, up until this last week, they've had pretty remarkable offensive line health. Like they've had to miss McGarry for a few games, but for the most part, Storm Norton was holding up well. Then they lost Jake Matthews. Tyler Vrabel came in and played well. So it's like you can't even there's no injuries to blame. There's not.
I'll just say this, right? In terms of like how much I think things could or should change based off this week, right? Because we're going against a 1-win Carolina team. You lose this game, and I say this with all sincerity. You lose this game, I'm going to go right back to, again, what Grady Jarrett said after the Charger game last year. And I think we all remember that quote. And if you don't, I'll say it. Same shit, different season.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's going to boil down to. You lose this game, and all of a sudden, like now you're 2 games under 500 with everything you've been gifted and everything you've been handed, and you lose that where you really put yourself behind the 8 ball. Like we're already behind the 8 ball as it is. And again, it's because look, I know there are people that are saying, hey, we can still make the wild card. Well, you know why the wild card's so difficult to make right now? Because you lost that game to the Commanders with Sam Howell. Because you lost that game to the Vikings with Josh Dobbs, because you lost that game to the Cardinals with Kyler Murray making his first start. Like there are so many other teams now that are ahead of us with a similar record, but the reason why they have the tiebreaker is because their conference record is better than ours. So no, you trick those away. So there is no we can make the wild. It really is. We got to cheer for all these other teams to make things happen. So again, you lose this game this Sunday. And I know we hadn't even talked, like, here's how bad Carolina is. We've just talked so much about the Falcons stuff, right? Of like what's going on. They didn't do, all these things. Because you know what? Honestly, in my opinion, to an extent, and I get they're an NFL football team. I give them that respect.
Yep.
Carolina sucks.
Yeah.
Like I'm just saying it. I'm sorry. Carolina sucks.
Yeah.
And especially the fact that
They
Brian
know
Burns,
it.
like he didn't practice today. He who knows if he's going to be active. Their O-line, their starting O-line is about as good as the Falcons' makeshift O-line with 4 replacement players that we had.
The Falcons might be better
past Sunday. it might be. But again, that's my point. So again, that's why I'm saying this game means so much. But at the same time, it's the same reason why I'm so hesitant going into this game because I don't want that Grady Jarrett quote to come alive after this week.
Right.
Again.
No, yeah.
I don't want it to. You lose to Indianapolis, okay, I can kind of understand it. You lose to Chicago, again, I get it. Chicago's been playing a lot better, but still you should be able to beat Chicago. Like those are some games where it's like, and of course how it plays out. There's no excuse to lose to Carolina.
No.
Absolutely no excuse.
No. So you got to figure out a way.
Beating Carolina would also be the first time Arthur Smith has swept a division opponent in his 3 years.
Yep. Which.
Well, so you can't even say that. Oh yeah, he does a good job of winning against other NFC South teams, and that's his calling card. Like I don't know. I don't get what he's done to earn that kind of. I'm not earned to just be given that kind of job security because he hasn't earned anything.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. So again, it's I think we all need to see this team make the playoffs to even have the conversation about Arthur Smith returning. But it seems like the conversation's already been had, and the belief is that he'll stay, barring a late season collapse. But whatever that means, But I wouldn't
even mean.
I don't know. I mean,
I
losing
would
out.
define a late season collapse as missing out on the playoffs, but
yeah.
If they mean he has to go 0-4, then it's like, what are we doing? Like, what?
Right.
Why?
That's the bar. Yeah. I mean, I could coach us to 0-4. The rest of the way.
I could be on the field and we go 1-4, and it'd be all my fault.
Yeah. I mean, if you want someone to come take the fall for 0-4, like pay me the millions, I'll come do it.
Let's say he goes 1-3. That's 3 straight 7-10 seasons, and you're not going to fire him after that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree. So we did have two super chats in relation to this topic as well. First of all, from Falcons 4L with the $5. Thank you, Falcons 4L. He says, heard the bad news that Smith will be back next season. Yeah, it seems that way. And then we had Matthew with the 5. Thanks, Matthew. Says, NFL teams with the easiest schedules in 2023. Atlanta, then New Orleans, Indianapolis, San Francisco, Carolina. How do we ignore this? Tampa Bay had the first place schedule. We need to draft a quarterback. Arthur Smith gone. Yeah, I mean, this is going to kind of segue into our draft conversation because the Falcons are back to picking 11th now after the Tampa Bay has taken over and control of the division, which it's going to be this way no matter what happens. Like the Falcons will probably be picking, if they win some games, they'll probably be picking around this range, or they'll make the playoffs. But if they say they do have this mythical late season collapse, the Falcons could get inside the top 5. I mean, it's not out of the question because right now the teams all the way to the 5th pick have 5 wins. So, and they play several of these teams. Like they play the Bears. So if they lose that Bears game, the Bears would then overtake them in the draft order because the Falcons have the lowest strength of schedule. So they will lose or win all tiebreakers in the draft order. Vegas and the Chargers play each other this week. Those are 2 5-win teams. So one of those 2 teams is getting 6 wins. Then you got the Giants, you got the Jets, you got Tennessee. None of these teams look like so terrible that you wouldn't think that they would win any more games this year. So like it would be hilarious, obviously, if they do lose out. And maybe that would, lead to Arthur Smith's firing. But, it would probably help the add a new quarterback agenda that Matthew was pushing. But, it's kind of going to be another season just like that, where if they make the playoffs they get a top 10 pick. Yeah.
I'm just saying, having a top 5 pick and firing Arthur Smith, that doesn't sound like the worst deal right now.
I mean, it's kind of how I feel about it, honestly. And we got Corey Carter with $2 as well. Corey says, if we finish 2nd this year, we get then we also get a 2nd place schedule next year, just saying. Yeah, I mean, good point. But, I mean, I guess to me, it's like, I don't have any hope right now for this offense. And I just don't know what we're hanging our hat on if we're bringing back Smith at this point. Now, if he goes on a 4-0 run and they go in the playoffs and look good, then maybe we're having a different conversation at the end of the year. But I think the chances of this team going 4-0 are basically 0. I think the chances of this team going 3-1 are like 10% or less. So, I mean, I don't know what the most likely outcome is, 1-3 or 2-2. I mean, I don't think they lose out either, but I just don't like if they go 7-10 or 8-9. It's like what are we hanging our hat on? Why are we like showing confidence in this coach? What has Arthur Smith done to earn this level of trust? I just don't understand.
Let's ask the Magic Conch.
Yeah,
nothing.
Can't you say anything but nothing?
Nothing.
Try asking another question.
We're just all the SpongeBob quotes tonight. Yeah. No. Yeah. We got it's some dark times, guys. I appreciate everyone for trying to stick it out with us. We're trying to figure it out as well. At this point, we got to get past this Panthers game. They're probably going to win this Panthers game. Let's be honest. Like, yeah. I know.
Like I said, I wish I felt more confident. I really wish I did.
If they do lose this game, then I think that vision toward 0-4 is a lot clearer.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing standing between them and 0-4 is the Panthers. So, and
the Colts look like a very solid team with Gardner Minshew right now.
Yeah.
Even if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, Zach Moss has also looked very good.
The Bears, Washington State and Utah. I had to do that because Pac-12 is dying. So I those are 2 names. But Look, I'm gonna put it this way, and I hate this. I really do. And I think this is what's so frustrating for the three of us in here, and y'all please, agree to disagree with me if you feel that way, and anybody in the chat, please feel the right to agree to this with me as well. The thing that is holding the Falcons back from going 0-4 is the Atlanta Falcons. It's literally been that way this whole season in terms of why we are sitting here with the record that we have right now. Like, it's not, oh man, this team was just so good we couldn't overpower. Like, even in the blowouts, right? We can point to this play and that play in the Lions game. Well, those two plays go differently, and it wasn't anything that the Lions did. Like, no, you blew a coverage in the Jacksonville game in London. It wasn't Jacksonville was just that much better. No, Desmond, you made 2 bad throws in a row, and also you blew another coverage. It's like all these different things where the Falcons are the biggest blame for where they are in this season right now. And that's what's so frustrating. So I can't even say is the Panthers going over. And the reason why I'm saying that I have this fear of the Falcons losing to a 1-win Panthers team is not because of what Carolina can do. It's because of who the Falcons have shown themselves to be all year. Like they are just not a consistent product. And so that's where I'm saying like that's my fear for me. And my, like, if we do go 0-4 or we don't miss the playoffs, I'm not looking at it as, that team was just better. It is what it is, right? Like, it's not that. We're not playing the San Franciscos and the Phillies and Phillies of the last, before the last few weeks. Or
I'm sure that team would drop 40 on this team. So, well, maybe not because the defense would be good.
They might drop 40 on us. We drop 29 on them because we can't score 30.
Yeah.
But we're not playing the Baltimores, right? Like we're playing all these teams that are right here and there that we should beat. And the reason why we aren't beating them is because we beat ourselves. And that's whether you want to blame the quarterback, you want to blame the coach, the game plan, like all those things are true. This team consistently beats themselves, which is why, look, if it's a team that we talk about and you beat yourself, like, yeah, that's the reason why I can't confidently say, oh yeah, like this, we're going to win this game. Yeah. No, it has nothing to do with what Carolina does or doesn't do. It's more about what we do and don't do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the title of the episode. We come back to it. The Falcons can't get out of their own way. That is sort of the story of the season. Like, they beat themselves every single loss. And even in the wins, they've almost beaten themselves. Like, you go look at their schedule. Like, they have not turned the ball over in 3 games total this year. And they've turned the ball over multiple times in, what is it, 6 of those games, 7 of those games. They've turned the ball over multiple times on offense. So it's really remarkable that the defense is 12th in scoring and 11th in yards when they've turned the ball over multiple times in 7 of their 13 games or whatever.
Poor Larry Crown.
Yep.
Good gosh, that's so bad to hear.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So it's just, and I know there's some people saying like, well, we haven't seen Arthur Smith with a good quarterback. That's his decision. Fault. That was his decision. Like they have gone out of their way to spend the minimum and put the minimum into the quarterback position every single year under Arthur Smith. Going back to 2021, where they chose to take Kyle Pitts, which none of us were super against at the time, given what we thought Kyle Pitts was going to be utilized like. They chose to pass on Justin Fields. And like maybe, Justin Fields wouldn't have been this panacea for this offense, but like they clearly didn't think they needed a better quarterback. So like it's and that's exactly what you were saying, Adnan. Like, please, you can finish the thought. I mean, they made the decision to do that.
And they made the decision to do that because I feel like Arthur Smith thinks that his scheme is so much, high and above everything else. I've said it on the show in the past. I feel like Arthur Smith has such an ego that he thinks he can win with any quarterback. And he's never won anything.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan Tannehill. Yeah.
Bar.
In before Ryan Tannehill comes in this offseason. So, that because Ryan Tannehill is definitely going to save us.
It's probably the likeliest scenario if Arthur Smith stays on as the head coach. This team picks up Ryan Tannehill next year and gets their brains beaten in throughout the next season because, that schedule is very, very difficult. and then they finally part ways with Arthur Smith. But that's going to be another wasted year.
Yeah. I mean, that's my fear, is that they're not going to. I mean, maybe they do go out and make a crazy move for a quarterback, but like, what happens then? Like, what happens if Jaden Daniels is here and this offense still sucks? It's like, oh wow, we just wasted the rookie season of Jaden Daniels, with this terrible. Like, are we gonna are we gonna call Jaden Daniels a bust then? Like, are we gonna call whoever quarterback that comes in here a bust then? Because right now we've seen like every quarterback that this offense touches turn into a bad quarterback. Maybe Matt Ryan 2021 is like the exception, because Matt Ryan was still playing well at that point. But like,
maybe Matt Ryan was actually kind of good, and people in his fan base, didn't appreciate him. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think.
Well, for some people, sadly,
for some people, it is.
It is. Yeah.
No, I mean, we'll continue talking about it, guys. We'll see what happens this weekend. I mean, obviously, if they lose, it's time for the draft takes, right? Because the chances they go 0-4 and end up with a top 5 pick are much higher. And in that scenario, the chances of them getting one of these top quarterbacks is actually really high. Like, if they don't take a top quarterback when they're picking in the top 5, then, I mean, I don't know what the hell to tell you. It's like, what are we going to do?
It's going to be Arthur Smith saying that we can win with Ritter.
I mean, maybe they'll take Laiatu Latu or something like that, and I wouldn't be too upset if they take like a star edge rusher. But like, that would be the only option that I would accept, if you take a star pass rusher. But
they're taking back Powers.
Hell yeah! Look, if at first you don't succeed, try again, Adnan. Right? Like we couldn't make Kyle Pitts into a blocker, so let's just take another tight end in the top 5 that we already know can block. That'll solve all of our problems. There we go, easy peasy. But yeah, guys, we'll see how it goes. We got one more from Corey Carter. Thanks, Corey, by the way, the $2. He says, I've got 2 quarterbacks on my fantasy team, Stroud and Ritter, and this week I'm putting my whole season on the line if Stroud doesn't play. Changed my mind, really. I mean, I hope you don't have a 2 QB league. I guess is what I'm saying. Ritter actually, for his part, has been a decent fantasy quarterback because he scores rushing touchdowns. Yeah, he's actually been a decent fantasy quarterback. Yeah, especially this year. Yeah. No, it's not against the Panthers. Yeah, I mean, I would do it if I had to, for sure. Or you could be like me and start the GOAT Jake Browning. Yeah. I started Jake Browning that first week that he was started. And somebody was up like 18 points on me, and I bet they were like, "Oh yeah, I got this in the bag." And then he scores like 25, and I just like died. I was like, "Oh yeah." You should have known you were going up against the GOAT. The GOAT never disappoints. So Jake Browning, shout out, fantasy hero. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us and trying to endure this terrible season. This I think it's a mess of their own making. They didn't really, and like Taylor Heineke came in too and looked terrible. Like, it's like every quarterback that this offense touches looks terrible. Mariota looked terrible. Heineke looked terrible. Ritter has looked better than those two, but not by much.
There's a common denominator.
Yeah, and it's like, I think like Ritter in a system that made more sense and that maybe had easier responsibilities for him, didn't ask so much of him, I think Ritter could probably be passable. Like, I think he's shown the ability to make throws. Obviously, his accuracy, especially deeper past the intermediate area, is problematic. That's probably always going to be something he deals with. But like, you see the rushing ability, you see his ability on zone read. He's finally started putting the ball in his outside hand when he runs, so that's a big step. I feel like Ritter could be a passable starter at times. I think he's obviously someone that should be here long-term as a backup. I think at worst he's a quality backup, but like, so even with Ritter, it's like he clearly hasn't played good enough. I mean, we know that. I mean, I did a whole tweet thread about it. He just hasn't been good enough to be the starter next year. But like, I think in like, if he, and this isn't fair because no one else is Kyle Shanahan, but like in Kyle Shanahan's offense, he'd be fine. He'd probably be an effective starter because Kyle Shanahan creates so much space for his players that the quarterback isn't expected to be a hero every single snap. And we need to stop if the offense you're running requires Patrick Mahomes or like an elite quarterback to execute it, you got a bad offense, because guess what? There's only like 2 or 3 of those guys in the NFL. You have to be able to make do with something less than that. Otherwise, you're a quarterback missing a couple games away from you missing the playoffs, because the NFL, especially at the top, you're on the knife's edge every week between the first seed and being out of the playoffs. I mean, it can be really close. So you need to have an offense that you can insert a passable quarterback into, and it needs to be okay. And the Falcons just clearly don't have that right now. And I think that's why why we have so many questions about the future of this team, essentially, is that like it looks bad. Nobody is succeeding. We haven't found a single quarterback that looks good in here. Ryan Tannehill's the only one,
In fairness, they look at what they've invested in those quarterbacks. Free agent, after the initial wave, Marcus Mariota, 3rd round pick, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, another free agent. Like, you have to invest in this position. Like, this is the most important position in sports, and they're not giving it the value that it deserves. They're not giving it the value that it needs. And again, that's on the decision makers. You've had 3 off seasons.
Yeah. It's just frustrating, and I know you guys are frustrated too. And we all wanted this to work. Obviously, I mean, none of us want to ever have a coaching staff be fired. I mean, we don't want Smith to be fired. We wanted this team to make the playoffs. I mean, we were filled with optimism a couple weeks ago, like, okay, maybe they can turn this around. Maybe they actually can convince us. And they just, every opportunity they have to do that, they squander it. And it's the same problems. And to me, that just reeks of, this is a top-down issue. This is a coaching staff problem. Everyone's sloppy. The routes aren't being run well. The spacing in the offense is bad. The passing game concepts are bad. It's asking way too much of the quarterback. And, I mean, perfect example, right? You look at like Cincinnati's offense with Jake Browning. Jake Browning's not some elite quarterback, but guess what? That offense makes things easy on him. Even the Giants, like, they go to Tommy DeVito, the Italian legend, he's able to execute that offense. Yeah.
I'm happy you brought up Jake Browning, because I played against Jake Browning in college.
Yeah. Not a bad quarterback.
I've seen it's a mix. You can get a really good Jake Browning where it's like, I think what a lot of Cincinnati is seeing a good bit of this run where it's like, oh yeah, no, he's a good dude. But like, there are times where you get a very bad Jake Browning. But to your point, it's a thing of, you make it easy for him. Again, we look at Josh Dobbs in Minnesota. I know he just got benched, but the reason why the run kind of was where it was, like, one, yes, you didn't have tape with him for Minnesota for a while. I'm not even saying just for the Falcons game, but remember, they also beat New Orleans too, right? And things were humming, against Minnesota. But the thing is, there are certain teams, there are certain coaches, they make things easier for certain quarterbacks. And the reason why I bring that up is, so like, I wanted to read this Dan Orlovsky tweet off before we finish. He brought this out the other day. He said 3 things with the Atlanta Falcons offense for me. 1, Drake London is a star. They should throw to him. They should throw him the ball way more. Absolute stud wide receiver. I think we all
no argument there,
that, right? Like, no shocker.
Yep.
Another one. I like to see more zone read and in parts of the field other than just the red zone. I think we've all agreed that we'd like to see make the game easier for Desmond Ridder, right? Let him use his legs more. And again, like, I wish people would read between the tea leaves. Why do you think we're saying make the game easier for a quarterback? Because he's not good enough to where you make the game hard for him. So yes, we talk about coaching a lot on here, but a part of the reason why we say, like, hey, no, give him some boots and things like that, it's because we're saying we know he's limited. Make it easier for him. But there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And like, if you don't want to listen to me say that, you don't want to listen to Kevin or Adnan or Alan, like anybody on here, listen to the guys that have played the game at the quarterback position at a high level. There's a Hall of Fame quarterback out there that has questioned what this offense looks like scheme-wise. So it's not like it's just us. Okay. And then, of course, no exaggerating, Bijan should get a minimum 25 touches per game final month, as I know we've all been saying that too, right? So again, just getting back to the whole point of, look, it's one of those things. Like I said, I'm glad y'all brought up those 2 quarterbacks, because it's amazing what can happen when you do have a scheme. And like, if you're going to tell me that Tommy DeVito or Jake Browning is, well, More so for sure, Tommy DeVito is better than Desmond Ridder. I will take my headset off. I will walk out. I'll log out of the call. You will never see me on here ever again. Right? Like that's where I stand on that. But that being said, it does say something in terms of the coaching making things easier for those limited quarterbacks. Like I said, for the most part, I don't think we see that enough in Atlanta. I just don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's where I land, is that you can make things easy you can make things easy on your young quarterback. You can set the table for him. You can lean on a strong run game to make things easier, to make things simpler, right? And they don't do those things. Maybe it's because of misplaced trust in Ridder. I don't know. But from the very beginning, they put a lot on Ridder's plate. They didn't make it easy on him. And it's been to their detriment. Ridder has been very mistake prone. He's made a lot of bad reads. He's made a lot of bad decisions. But he's not being helped either. And it's not, and a lot of people, and some people would probably say like, oh, well, like, I mean, I'm sure Ridder isn't telling them, like, why isn't Ridder telling them to simplify the offense? Because he would never say that. Like, no quarterback's going to be like, actually, I can't handle the playbook, guys. Please ratchet it back. No NFL quarterback is going to do that, because it would be such a blow to your ego to actually admit that. And like, you have to be confident in yourself in the NFL. Even if you suck, even if you're not good enough, you have to think you are, or you have no chance. You have to believe in yourself. Even if no one else does, if you don't believe in yourself, like, you're done. You have no chance in the NFL. You're cooked. So you have to believe in yourself. And Ridder's not going to say, hey, guys, you need to ratchet back the play calling a little bit, make it a little easier on me. That'd be great, because I can't handle some of these reads. It's too complicated. There's too many moving pieces. Like, that's a lot to expect from a veteran, much less a guy who's basically starting. He still hasn't even started a full season of games yet. I mean, it's getting close now. It's 15 games. But this coaching staff has to do better. They have to put him in a position to succeed, and they haven't done that. And I think that's one of the biggest indictments that we've seen, is that we were supposed to have this strong run game. We were supposed to have this staff that knows what to do. They can scheme it up. And not only have they not leaned on the run game, the Falcons are 15th in yards per carry this year, by the way, nowhere near what they should be. It's just, you got to be better. You have to be better. And they haven't done that so far. But yeah, please go ahead, Adnan.
I'm just going to say one thing. You said that there may be some misplaced trust in Desmond Ridder from this coaching staff. I feel like that's something that they would have in common, because there seems to be some misplaced trust from this franchise in Arthur Smith, and
it's all the way down.
That's pretty much all I have to say about that. You guys hit on every point. I would just be repeating what you guys are saying. I agree with everything. It's just exhausting at this point, because this season was supposed to go a lot better than it has, and we were expecting that, and it hasn't. And it's just same old Falcons.
Yeah, I agree. So we got go ahead, Jordan, if you've got something to add.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, to Adnan's point, Grady Jarrett's quote. I'm trying not to say it again, but he Grady and Adnan both, they're right on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they are. So we got a trio from James MT95 here.
Thanks,
that
James.
We'll get to. Yeah, thanks, James. Appreciate you. That'll close us out. We got, so with the $5 first, thanks, James. Says, I don't think we had the options to invest at quarterback in the previous years. Look at those free agency classes in 2022 and 2023 and the draft classes. Arthur Smith expected Ryan to be here long term and then transition. There's always options. And like, I mean, I wasn't in favor, obviously, of going all out for Lamar, and also Lamar was never available. So like, I'm not really going to talk about that one because he was never available anyway. But like, they could have made moves those years. Like, sure, they could have made a move, and like the Panthers went up to number 1 to get Bryce Young last year. Like and they were picking behind the Falcons. Now I'm not saying that was a great idea or anything, but like, let's not pretend that there weren't options. Like, the Falcons could have made that trade with the Bears instead of the Panthers. They could have gotten up to number 1. They had assets. They could have done this type of stuff. Now, obviously, the Bears wanted DJ Moore, and that helped solidify the trade. But, I mean, it's all part of it. They have they had options. There were more options than were what was available, right?
Was there in 2021.
Yes, and that's the big one. I would say, like, I would say that was their chance to get a quarterback if they thought they needed one. And like I would have said, they should have just done it anyway, because you never know. Like at Matt Ryan's age, I think he was 37 in 2021. Yeah. You just don't know how many more years you're going to get. And it would have been the perfect scenario to develop a guy for a year or two and then gently insert him, after that. But they chose not to do that. Maybe they did expect Ryan to be here, but then they went and pursued Deshaun Watson. Now we know that wasn't really Smith and Fontenot's idea, or maybe even their call at all. But they then let Ryan leave. They traded him away, and that was out of respect for Ryan. I get that, but they didn't make any attempt to really replace him either. Like they signed Marcus Mariota, so like. And I mean, I get the 2022 class didn't have great quarterback options. But still, like what about Ryan Tannehill? He could have been had in a trade this year. And like, I agree, like it wouldn't have been a great setup and I wouldn't have loved it, but like they could have made a move for Ryan Tannehill if they thought that Ritter was so bad, but they had a lot of faith in Desmond Ritter. And it seems like I just don't know who to blame. Like, I'm not sure if it's really Desmond Ritter's fault, or if it's Arthur Smith's fault, or if it's a joint thing. It's probably at least somewhat of a joint thing, right?
Definitely joint.
But, yeah.
It's definitely joint. I mean, obviously, like... Yeah. No, sorry. I sorry.
No, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I
was
mean,
going to say,
go
like,
ahead. Yeah.
In terms of the Marcus Mariota thing, again, once I saw I think he was released from the Raiders. I think that's where he was before. It was like, oh, he's going to be in Atlanta. And the reason why is because, well, where was he before... he got to Vegas? He was in Tennessee. So like in terms of being in a transition window, you knew that was what was going to happen. Where I think, again, our issue or my issue have been all along is we saw how things were going with Marcus. You should have let Desmond play earlier. And I think that would have given us a better idea, us being, the decision makers at B, what do we have at quarterback? Like, again, you just let him play 4 games. And of course, one of them was against second and third teamers against Tampa Bay because they already had the division sealed up. So you didn't really see much from there. So you came into this year hoping you thought you had what you had at quarterback, right? But in reality, like the way this is probably going to play out is you really just had two backups as your top 2 options, talking about Desmond, which I think that's what he's going to end up being overall. And of course, Taylor Heineke. Now, again, I'm saying that to say I still honestly don't fully know what Desmond Ritter is. I'm just going off of what I have seen of him,
Yeah.
So that's why I get frustrated in terms of going into this year, all the cap space we had, all the moves that we did. Maybe you do make something happen for a quarterback. Sure. But because you didn't let Desmond play earlier last year when he could have and should have played, you had no idea, which let you be even more bullish on letting him be the guy going into this year. So that's what I'm saying. Overall, like they played themselves.
Yeah. No, I think that's the big thing is that Desmond Ritter should have started like half the games last year. Marcus Mariota like clearly was mentally broken after a certain point, and he really shouldn't have been on the field anymore. But we had to wait 14 weeks to see Desmond Ritter. And that was ridiculous. It was a terrible decision. I think we all know that. That was their first mistake with this quarterback situation. And I think that was our first clue that they didn't really know what the hell they were doing there. The second one, and Adnan beat this drum a lot, Ritter barely played in the preseason. Barely played. He played like a handful of drives the entire time. They treated him like Matt Ryan in the preseason. And lo and behold, he looked really sketchy the first like 4 games. Like just completely not ready.
They were hiding him in camp too. Like I don't know if you remember training camp, but we were there every single day, and every single day never threw it deep.
Yeah.
Every single pass was within 5 yards for the most part, the majority. And I saw people and I saw other members of the media just pushing this narrative of, oh, he went 7 for 8 on his passes in 7
on one drive. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, he went 7 for 8. all 7 of those passes were screen passes. Like they were all screens and slants. Like I would hope he would go 7 for 8. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand it. That they treated him like he was some MVP winner. But
Yeah.
exactly. You reap what you sow at this point.
Yeah. And I know it's like maybe it wouldn't have led to Ritter being better, but I think it would have given us a clearer picture of what he was. And maybe, like, I don't know if it would have changed things for this coaching staff, like made them realize he wasn't as ready as they thought that he was. But they botched it. They didn't give him enough reps in the preseason. They didn't really give him much of a chance to get ready. They kind of anointed him too early. And clearly Taylor Heineke's not a better option. I mean, I think we know that obviously at this point, but it was botched, the whole thing. And I know people are saying, well, they were in the division hunt last year, so that's why they didn't benchmark. Mariota was costing them games. Like, he was losing them games. Like, I don't know what you're preserving. Yeah.
Yes. I want to say this one final thing, and then I got to go after this. But I want to say this one final thing, because let's look at the schedule again last year, because I think people kind of forget. You get jaded, and I get it in terms of, like, you could say the same thing for this year of, like, you get jaded by a division push, yada yada. The reason why last year is different from this year in that regard is last year you weren't supposed to go for anything. It was like oh wait, we're still kind of around. Okay, cool. This year was like, no, you were supposed to have everything around where you're supposed to win this division. So I'm just going to ask people again, after that Thursday night game on November 10th, when the Falcons lost 25-15 to Carolina, and this dude, Marcus Mariota, threw the football like this on his back. You really thought that we were supposed to win a damn division? Like, really? I like, seriously, because, like, this is what we did to close out that year. You lost then to the Chargers, and again, that wasn't even like fully on Marcus. Drake London had the fumble by the goal line. What was his name? D lineman fumbled and nobody touched him.
God. Yeah,
that was it was Saquon. It was Saquon. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Poor Saquon.
You beat Chicago by 3, then you lose. Like, come on now. Let's be honest about that. Like, in terms of, this was the first year that this team actually had expectations. Last year, you did not have expectations. We can be all honest about that. Again, remember, this is supposed to be a 3-year plan. That was year 2. So if that's going to be year 2, you might as well see what you have in the guy that you just brought in, right? And you didn't do it. And I really do think that hurt the decision-making process going into the season. Like, I that's why I'm saying, like, there are 2 different things. Like, yeah, okay, cool. You were in the division hunt last year. But again, like, we've all talked about how bad this roster was last year, right? Obviously, we all know the roster is a whole lot better this year than it was last year. And we can talk about the quarterback position this year. We can talk about it last year. I'm listening to those conversations, right? Like, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. What I'm saying is, you were in the division hunt last year just off of being lucky. You're supposed to be in the division hunt this year. So those are 2 different things. Yeah, like I said, I gotta hop out as always.
You. We went long
Kevin,
tonight,
y'all. Yeah, I know. Everybody in the chat, love y'all, appreciate you. And we will we'll definitely talk soon. Peace out, everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate you. Yeah. No, I mean, I know some people think, like, if we took Mariota out, we'd be tanking. I think it's the opposite. I think, like, Desmond Ritter gave him a better chance to win. I think we all thought we were calling for Ritter to play, not because we wanted to tank, because we thought Ritter gave them a better chance to win. Because Mariota was mentally broken. Like, Mariota, if he was playing well, like he was early in the year, where he wasn't playing great, but he was playing fine, that was a different story. But he clearly just lost it at some point. Like, he just was making too many mistakes. He was very timid, and we already knew he couldn't throw deep. So, they drafted Ritter to be, quote unquote, the quarterback of the future, or at least give him a chance. And we needed to see him. We needed to see him have an opportunity to win instead of being put in when they were already out. So, I think I'm not going to back off of that. I think playing Ritter gave them a better chance to win, because Mariota was mentally broken, and you could see it every time he stepped on the field. There was no chance of him leading us to anything other than a higher draft pick, which maybe we should have done, But Yeah. So we got the final two from James here, saying a lot of times these young quarterbacks are a flash in the pan. A lot of these guys that emerge from nowhere get figured out after their film is out. Yeah, I mean, that happens. Like, I don't think anyone's expecting like Jake Browning and Tommy DeVito to be like long-term stars. I mean, maybe like fans that are uber hyped right now are, but like, it's more that I think good offensive coaches can like squeeze some good games out of these backup quarterbacks and keep the teams afloat, or like do some upsets and do some stuff that we're just not seeing the Falcons do. Like Ritter should be able to have games like that where he's out there balling and dealing and all this. And outside of that Texans game, I haven't really seen Ritter play a clean game. I think that Texans game, he did a lot of the heavy lifting and he actually covered up the mistakes of everybody else. And that was really the only time all season we've seen that happen. So it was tough. It was tough. And then James also says, I'm not a Ritter stan, by the way. I think Smith needs to call plays better. Yeah, I know, James. I think you're trying to really dive into the debate of is it Smith or Ritter, and it's both. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what Joe Schmo in the chat says, is that I think it is mostly Smith, with Ritter playing a contributing role. But how much of it is being held back by Ritter, it's kind of hard to say because of how bad the offense looks as a whole. So it's just, he undoubtedly has something to do with that. It's clear he's not executing it cleanly, but they're not really putting him in a position to succeed either. All right, Adnan, anything else you want to get to before we sign off tonight?
Nope.
I think we covered it. I think we covered it pretty well. But guys, thank you for hanging out so late with us tonight. Obviously, we had a lot to get off our chests, a lot of takes, a lot of thoughts to put out there. We'll obviously be back for a game preview on coming out on Friday, previewing this Panthers game, so stay tuned for that. We'll obviously have the post game coming to you on Sunday, where we're probably going to be talking about a win, probably, but if we're not, it'll be spicy, I'm sure. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Please leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can sign up for that channel membership on YouTube if you want to get those exclusive perks. If you're more of a podcast listener, you can check out the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic live. And yeah, I'm just happy to have all these Falcons fans here. You guys make it easier on us. Tonight's show, of course, was brought to you by BetOnline. We will see you guys real soon. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks to Jordan Watkins at Big75Fella and, of course, to Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way for tonight's co-hosting duties. We will be back soon with more Falcons takes, whether we like it or not. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a great night, folks.